All right, I can see the first viewer has joined. If you are the first one to join, make sure you comment. First commenter gets a priority spot in the next mastermind or any mastermind that you want to join. Your chance to win $100 or some other cool prizes. So if you are the first one on this live stream, make sure you comment, put your name first, and you will get a priority spot on the next mastermind game show. And that's where you can win $100 or some other cool prizes. So if you're jumping on, welcome. I'm going to allow a few more minutes just for people to join. I'm going to be answering some questions, giving some feedback on essay responses. So if you're keen to improve your work as you go through the HSC or you go through another year, I mean, maybe you're in year 11, year 10, and you're working on your English. And if you want to improve, I'm just going to be answering some practical questions. I've had a few questions about how to prepare for Module C. I've had some questions about how to prepare for a Module B essay if you're doing an unseen question in timed conditions. So if you've got an in-class exam for a Module B essay or a Module A essay, what's the best way to prepare in that case? So do you memorize a draft? What kind of draft should you create? What kind of practice questions should you be looking at? And then I've also got a sample response here from a student, one lucky student who I'm going to be helping by breaking down their response on the Jedd-AI platform. Jedd-AI is Jeddle's marking tool. If you're not on Jedd-AI, make sure you do check it out. You can actually start for free now. If you go on there, you'll be able to check it out, put in an essay, get immediate feedback using our trained models. But you can also ask someone from the community, from one of our experts from the Jeddle community for feedback. So we're trying to create a very dynamic and fast way for you guys to get feedback on your essays so that you can improve them and boost your marks for your exam. So Jedd-AI is the way to do that. Jedd-AI is on jeddle.com if you want to use that tool. That's what I'm going to be using to do the feedback today. But if you have any questions, please do ask and chuck a comment in the comments right now. It's a little bit quiet for my liking. First one to put their name in the comments gets the opportunity to go on the next mastermind episode. There's only 2 or 3 contestants per episode. Your chance to win $100 or another prize. And you don't have to do it, but just check in and say hello. I don't want to discourage you from saying hello. You're not going to be forced to go on mastermind, but it's a pretty fun little show that we do. So please just say hello in the comments. If you don't want to do mastermind, I will hook you up with something else, some other kind of prize just for being on here. So let me know that you're here in the chat. It might be a little bit delayed, and then I'm going to get into it. If you have any questions about preparing for your exams, if you have any essay questions that you want to ask about, if you have an exam coming up, let me know what kind of assessment you're dealing with. Let me know the kinds of questions you need to prepare for, and let me know what you're most unsure about, and I will do my best to help you. I'll try and keep it short and sweet, as impossible as that is for me. But I do want to help you. So let me know any of your questions. Otherwise, I'll get into the first review. Do leave questions in the in the comments. So if you have a question right now on anything you're doing at school, how to prepare for exams, how to prepare your essays, put them in the comments for me. Otherwise, I'm going to just share the screen now and we will get into it. So let's see if I can get this working for us. Share this screen. Here we go. All right, hopefully you can see that. I'm going to position myself a slightly better spot. All right, cool. So here we have a student essay. We've got a student essay response. We've put this through on the Jedd-AI platform, which is our way of providing instant feedback for your essays. And I'm now going to go through myself and offer some comments, offer some feedback on how this can be improved. And we're going to make it as practical as possible for this student. So they've submitted a body paragraph for the Richard study, Module A Textual Conversations, King Richard III and Looking for Richard. They have submitted an essay for that textual conversation. So that's Module A English Advanced. But don't worry, if you're doing another subject or you're in another year group, this is still going to help you. This is someone's body paragraph of an essay by the looks of it. I'm doing this live, okay? First time looking at it. The question is, textual conversations provide timeless insights into timeless human conditions. Okay, timeless insights into timeless human conditions, and that's provided by a textual conversation. Textual conversation is when you're comparing two texts. In the context of this essay, I believe this student has just focused on King Richard III for this particular paragraph. So let's go through and analyze this student's body paragraph for this essay. They start off with a topic sentence. Power is a critical condition in humans that is used in Elizabethan times for the purpose to gain ranks as close to God as possible. Okay, so it's a little bit clunky for the topic sentence. Power is a critical condition in humans. I'm not going to pick up on grammatical errors and issues as much as conceptual things and ways of expressing your ideas a little bit more clearly. I think that's more important to focus on here. But be aware of like grammatical issues. You can see an apostrophe here that shouldn't be there. Those kind of things, hard for me to look past, but we need to focus on the other areas. Make sure you're just paying attention to that. But what have we actually said here? Power is a critical human part of human condition, or is a critical condition in humans. So you're saying power is a human condition. Now that's not actually true, is it? So the way it's worded is not reflecting what you're trying to say. And I can see our first comment on the side, by the way. Remember, you're beautiful just the way you are. What a lovely name. Hello, nice to see you again. I know you've been in a few, so thanks for coming on. If you want to join Mastermind, if you haven't been on Mastermind already, send us an email and at hello@jeddle.com, and you can have a reserved place because you're the first one to comment. Now, back to this, you can see that it says power is a critical condition in humans that is used in Elizabethan times for the purpose to gain ranks as close to God. All right. That is not actually a human condition. We have to be careful using a word like power in this way. If you want to talk about power in relation to the human condition, then you need to make the point a lot clearer. So right now, power is critical. This is not actually making much sense, okay? So in terms of what we want to say here, clear expression, right? We want to simplify the expression to make it easier to understand. So let's actually make it better here and see how we can improve it. So instead of saying power is a human condition that is used in Elizabethan times, you've brought in context there, but it sounds a little bit funny the way that context is brought in, for the purpose to gain ranks as close to God. Okay, certainly in the Elizabethan era, power was a way of ascending that social and religious hierarchy, that great chain of being, if you will. So the great chain of being is a key contextual element that you're referring to here. But let's first of all start off by getting the power part down. I think we can make it a lot clearer here. So power is a critical, okay. And remember, this is about textual conversations providing timeless insights into timeless human conditions. So nothing in the topic sentence actually refers to the textual conversation as well. So if this was the first body paragraph of your essay, we could start off with something like instigating the textual conversation. Instigating the textual conversation, excuse my spelling. Instigating the textual conversation with Pacino. This is who Shakespeare's talking about, right? Shakespeare's, you could say Richard III, or you don't even need to say, you can just say Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare demonstrates the timeless human condition of, what are we going to say? What do we want to say about power? I assume you want to say that power is something that corrupts people, right? It's a corruptible thing, but humans are naturally drawn to power. There's an allure of power. So it demonstrates the timeless allure of power. The timeless allure of power. We don't need to say for humans, right? We're saying this is a human condition. Demonstrates the timeless allure of power. For individuals, demonstrates the timeless allure of power for individuals who are motivated to ascend the social hierarchy. And here's a little sneaky way of getting in the context specific to Shakespeare. You could do a comma at the end and say, not least, we're saying not least within the Elizabethan great chain of being, you could say. Or not least, who ascend the social hierarchy, not least, get rid of within, the Elizabethan great chain of being. So instigating the textual conversation with Pacino, here we're just addressing the actual module. So it's important with a textual conversation essay that you are engaging with the words of the module. So in this case, because it's textual conversation, we actually should try and flag that at the start. Then we say Shakespeare demonstrates the timeless allure of power. Now we're actually saying something about the human condition. And then we're saying it for individuals who are motivated to ascend the social hierarchy. So now it's a very clear point about power, that power is always tempting for people who want to move up in the world. And then we say, very sneakily here, not least the Elizabethan great chain of being, because it's within this Elizabethan context, right, that we have the great chain of being. And the great chain of being was that the name for the social hierarchy at the time, where you had the king and then you had God above that. And then below the king, you had the heir, and below the heir, you had the nobles, and then you had the commoners. And then, at the very bottom, you have rocks. So you have that hierarchy that's clearly defined. And that is an example of how you can improve the topic sentence. Okay. So hopefully that helps to begin with. Now, I'm noticing some questions coming in on the side, so I will address those questions shortly. Bear with me. I'm just going to go through a few more sentences. Hopefully that helps you rephrase that top sentence. I think we've made a bit of an improvement there. Richard's domination on other royals is achieved through his title, Duke of Gloucester. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I mean, some people say Gloucester, but I think you're meant to say it in this kind of peculiar way. So he's the Duke for the purpose to become king. Now, the issue with this sentence, can you guess it, is that it's storytelling. You're just describing, you're not analyzing. We never want to just describe in a sentence. If you're ever going to be descriptive, you need to merge that in with analysis within the same sentence effectively. So this sentence just says, Richard's domination on other royals is achieved through his title for the purpose to become king. Sounds like he's just retelling me the story. I'm not interested in learning about the story. I can go read a summary online for that. I want to know what your argument is in relation to power, and I want to know what evidence you have to support that argument. So in this case, the issue is that you actually are storytelling. You're describing the story. You're not analyzing the meaning or significance of that particular aspect, okay? So we need to analyze the meaning or significance of the text rather than describing the story. Now, you could actually probably just omit that or merge it with your next sentence, depending on what you're going to say. So let's have a look. He ironically conveys that he's conscious. I think you mean conscience. Conscience means like your sense of morality. Conscious means you're awake, you're aware. Conscience is your sense of right or wrong. So he ironically conveys that his conscience is created to devastate others, as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, foreshadowing the sins he will commit for the throne relating to his devilish connections. Okay, so a couple of things to pick up on here. He ironically, so you've got a technique there. There's the technique, ironically. He ironically conveys that his conscience is created to devastate others. I mean, yeah, that is ironic that your conscience, your sense of morality, is telling you to do something destructive. Okay. And then it says, as I am subtle, false, and treacherous. So you actually get this list of adjectives that Richard uses to describe himself as evil. I am subtle, false, and treacherous. Now, can we actually integrate this quote into this sentence in a more seamless way? Because at the moment you've got a comma here. See the comma? We want to avoid that comma, and we want the sentence to flow like a normal sentence, so that if you remove the quotation marks, it still sounds like a normal sentence. So he ironically conveys that his conscience is created to devastate others. And then you could say evidenced or exemplified through his self-description. This is what you'd call a self-description, right? So it's a self-description. And I'll say the other bit, revealed through. He ironically conveys that his conscience is created to devastate others, which is exemplified or reflected by his self-description. And we said it's a list. It's got an accumulation to it. Accumulation is the technique you can use there as being subtle, false, and treacherous. So it's an accumulative or cumulative. You could use either word, right? Cumulative or accumulative self-description as subtle, false, and treacherous, right? Which is reflected by that. Okay. And then you would end the sentence there and say, this foreshadows, and you go on to say the next sentence. This foreshadows the sins he will commit for the throne, relating to. I'm not a big fan of relating to as an expression, but let me see if I can pull this up here. Yeah, I would kind of word it like that. I'm not a big fan of relating to his devilish connections. You might not even need that particular part, but you could probably reword that in a smoother way. Moving on, though, he dismisses the structure of divine chain. He dismisses the structure of divine chain. Yeah, that he dismisses the kind of great chain of being, if you like. That's kind of that's the hierarchy. To obtain the throne, and metaphorically claims. See how the sentence is structured here? Try to avoid structuring the sentence this way. He dismisses the structure. It's like your storytelling before going into your analysis when you say metaphorically claims. This still, even though it has a quote and a technique, is descriptive. He dismisses. Try and start the sentence with the technique. That's a really powerful adjustment that you can make here. It's simple. Restructure the sentence so that you actually start with the metaphorical claim, or the use of a metaphor reveals his dismissal of that divine chain of being due to his timeless thirst or timeless craving for the power of kinghood, all right, or to be or for power as king. Okay, so we need to actually restructure these sentences so they're more analytical. Let's see if that's here. I know one of the pointers here is about structure, leading or starting the sentence with the technique, and that's kind of what I want you to do. Whether or not we can find it in here, I'm just going to put it as a markup here, so just bear with me. Here we go. We want to actually lead with the technique. So instead of he dismisses that, metaphorically claims king's name is a tower of strength. Yeah, so Richard's use of, or Richard's metaphorical. Instead of saying use of metaphor, I'm going to say metaphorical so that it has a bit more flow here. Richard's metaphorical characterization of the king's name as a tower of strength. Now, we are quoting from here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something sneaky again. I'm actually going to do the king's name, and instead of writing is a tower of strength, which you have cited as the exact quotation from the play, I want it to flow by saying as. So what I've done is I've changed the is to as, and I put square brackets around the a to indicate where I've made that adjustment. So Richard's metaphorical characterization of the king's name as a tower of strength, notice how that sentence is flowing perfectly now. I don't have to pause to say the quote. And that is just done by beginning with the technique, but not just saying Richard's metaphor. I said metaphorical characterization because by playing around with the metaphor, and you can experiment yourselves, I found a way to flow into the quote without having to pause. So that's a more sophisticated way of writing. All right. So Richard's metaphorical characterization of the king's name as a tower of strength, right? What does that do? Emphasizes his insatiable, albeit human. It's insatiable. He can't stop. Albeit human. And why am I going human? I want to bring it back to the human condition. Albeit human craving for abundant or absolute power. Okay, I'm just going to keep it simple in the effect. You might want to add more detail. We can probably elaborate on these points a little bit more and add more depth. But for now, we're just trying to get you that one level up. And you're going to get that level up by becoming more analytical with your structure, okay? So there you have it, a much better, a much cleaner analytical sentence. The next level would be to work on creating a more nuanced argument out of that. Give us something more than just saying, yes, he's hungry for power. Just saying he's hungry for power isn't going to get you to that band 6 level. It's not going to get you the A grade. But right now we're going from, C, D up to B, up to high B, just by having this structure. Excuse me. To remark his presence in theocentric belief, however, theocentric means religious. Theocentric. Centric means at the center. Theo is to do with theology, which is to do with religion. So religion is at the center of your belief system. That's what theocentric means. So does he have a theocentric belief? To remark his presence in theocentric belief, however murdering to become. Okay, this sentence doesn't actually flow or make sense, but we'll ignore that. Relating to his hellish illusions. Again, there's no actual evidence here. Try every sentence now in the middle of our body paragraph should be including a technique or some aspect of form. Ideally, you also have some contextual links in there, but more importantly, there's no quotes that are embedded. You've got to include a quote, okay? You've got to include at least one supporting quote to make sure that your analysis is clearly connected with the actual text. Not enough students embed little quotes, short quotes from the text to replace their own writing so that you can show how much you're involved and engaged with the text. This sentence, again, is relatively descriptive, even if it's to do with an idea or concept. So we need to work on, again, that structure. The stickamithia, which means like short exchanges, stickamythic exchanges. They're very like short, truncated between characters. The stickamithia between Anne and Richard notes the shift. Avoid verbs like notes. When you're better off just saying reveals, suggests, depicts. Those kind of verbs are going to be a lot more effective for you. The shift of power balance between them. Anne, black night overshade thy day and death thy life. Richard, curse not thyself, fair creature, thou art both. Right. So Richard is saying to Lady Anne, curse not thyself, fair creature, thou art both. He's saying you're both the day and, or rather, what's he saying here? Black night, and also day, your day and night, life and death, it seems. So there's a juxtaposition of life and death, day and night here. It's kind of vague, though. You read that and you're like, what is the shift of power? It just says the stickamithia. That's a good example of starting with a technique. So that's an improvement. The shift of power balance, right? But what is the shift of power balance? Is the power going more to Richard? Is he undermining the power of Lady Anne? So you need to be very clear there. Is he oppressing her? Is there something patriarchal going on? Patriarchal meaning it's because he is oppressing Lady Anne as a woman. So we need to be more specific with what we're saying there. I think that comes down to, I think we have lack of specificity here. You need to be more specific about what you mean. Don't just say terms like shift in power balance. If we look at this actual part here, we could say, yes, it is a shift in the power balance, but what shift? Which way is it going? By saying shift or change, I don't know what change or what direction that change is in. So here, are we talking about a subversion of power? Subversion of power? Are we talking about a patriarchal? Are we talking about the patriarchal oppression of Lady Anne, right? As an Elizabethan woman? So you need to be clear what you mean by this shift in power. And you should be more concise with the sentence. I think with all of this, you've got to ask yourself, was it necessary to have all of this quotation? This is a long 2-line quotation. I think you could break it up. So you can still say the stickamithia, but just take the key parts out of that quote like you do afterwards. We're saying black night, fair. I don't think you need every single word there. So have a go at actually shortening the quotation, breaking it up into smaller pieces. And for everyone tuning in, guys, this is on Jedd-AI. I'm doing it, which is Jeddle's AI-powered feedback tool. You can get feedback from expert markers. You can get a feedback from our community, like people like myself, or you can get immediate AI feedback based on our teacher-trained models so that you're not waiting days or weeks to get feedback from tutors or feedback from teachers. If you just want it instantly, you only have to wait a couple of minutes and you'll get a fully annotated draft showing you how you can make immediate improvements. So that's on Jedd-AI. If you go to the Jeddle website, you will find Jedd-AI, which is that immediate feedback and marking tool to help you improve those essays straight away. So the juxtaposition of Black Knight and fair reveals the inner morality of Anne being fair and prosperous versus, never say versus. See how this student has said verse, Richards? Never use that kind of colloquial or informal. This is too informal. But this is an essay, you have to be formal. So you would say, in contrast to is a much better expression, right? Richard's black and cursed linking with the bestial language bore. Okay. To humanize and link to his physiognomy. Okay. I think we're getting at the idea that because Richard is deformed, everyone knows Richard has that kind of hunched back, and he feels like that is a reflection of him being cursed. He feels like he's being cursed because he's been born with a deformity. And because he's been born with a deformity, he's bitter at the world. So now he wants to get his revenge and he wants to actually become king so that, he's got that chip on his shoulder, so to speak. And he really wants to get back at the world, arguably, right? So he doesn't feel like he has a sense of morality because he was born with a deformity. And people with his deformities at the time, excuse me, were believed to be cursed. So they were thought to be immoral or amoral. And then, so he's kind of leaning into those societal expectations, even though deep down he does have a conscience. But he's like, oh, well, I'm deformed, so I don't have to follow the rules of normal morality. And I can just go and kill someone and be very manipulative and make my way as king. So he tries to convince himself of that, but he is plagued by guilt towards the end of the play. Remember that. So even though he's deformed and an outcast in society, and therefore he's bitter at society and wants to undermine that social hierarchy and usurp the role of the king, the power of the king, he ultimately does have a conscience, and he does feel the pangs of guilt by the end of the play. Okay, Anne cannot defeat Richard as he is closer to God as becoming king than a woman. Okay, so again, ignoring like the fact that it's quite clunky and hard to follow these points, look how descriptive that is. Go through your essays, see if you've got any sentences like that just describe, and either remove them or combine them with analysis and begin the sentence with a technique. That is going to be such an easy and effective way for you to immediately improve your essays, to become more analytical. Get rid of these sentences, or lead the sentence with a technique and actually tell us why it's important to the ideas of the play. So in this case, again, we're storytelling. We need to get rid of it. To achieve a high degree in the divine chain, here's the divine chain, the great chain of being, exploiting one's condition of power was essential. Again, that's storytelling. So this should be framed more in the way of like, thus Shakespeare demonstrates, or Shakespeare proposes to Pacino. He's proposing an idea, proposes to Pacino the notion that power, that the need for power to compensate for perceived individual inadequacies, because Richard feels inadequate. That's really the key here. So he's compensating for perceived individual inadequacies, for perceived inadequacies, is a timeless element of the human condition, or something like that, right? So you just end the sentence with a thus, tell us what the ultimate point is, and you can see that here. Thus, Shakespeare proposes to Pacino the notion, it's quite clunky, I must say, but we could make this better. Shakespeare suggests the need for power to compensate for perceived individual inadequacies that the need is a timeless, yes. That the need for power to compensate for inadequacy, so you don't feel good about yourself, so you try and take power to make up for it, is a timeless element of the human condition. Okay. The reason why we say Shakespeare proposes to Pacino that idea is because this is in the context of a textual conversation. So in your link sentences, come back to the textual conversation language and include something about the dialogue going on between the two authors. And it can be as simple as that. Shakespeare suggests to Pacino. Atwood responds to Shakespeare if you're doing Hag's Seed, Tempest. Whatever pairing you're doing, make sure you come back to the pairing and the comparison at the end of the paragraph, even if you mainly focused on one text in that paragraph. Okay, so that is that paragraph summed up. I'm now going to just look at a few questions that you guys have submitted. I'll go in order to be fair. So bring me back. Here we go. All right, I'm preparing for a Module B assessment where we have 3 possible questions seen. So you've got 3 possible questions. You know what they are for the day. Our draft question is about how Henry explores dishonor. Yes, well, dishonor, leadership, they are key themes for sure in that play. Let's see what your actual question is. Where do I begin? I have notes on all concepts, leadership, honor, there you go, dual identity, but don't know where to begin my essay. How do I form a thesis? There is so much to discuss. Okay. Also, how would you actually prepare for this assessment? Write an essay for each type, I might be asked. Okay. The answer is you don't have to write an entirely new essay for every possible question that you've been asked. So let's go back to your original question so everyone can see it. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this. What do you do if you get asked multiple questions, or what do you do if you get given multiple possible questions that you could be asked in an exam? So it's very hard to kind of memorize 3 entirely different essays. What's the best approach? The best approach is to go to the question that resonates or connects with you the most and prepare a full draft essay for that question. The example here that you've provided is a question that's about dishonor. We'll talk about a possible structure for you to use in a second. But the key overall strategy when you're given multiple possible questions for an assessment is to find one question that you really like, prepare that response in full, perfect it, and then spend a lot of time thinking about the changes you would need to make for the other questions and practice doing the other questions in exam conditions. So prepare and memorize one core essay, and then practice writing new thesis statements, new topic sentences, new adjustments, a new essay effectively, but you're still using the same evidence as your core essay. Here's the caveat there. When you prepare your core essay based on one of those multiple questions, make sure in the back of your mind, you've got those other questions there so that when you structure your core essay, you know that it's going to be adaptable to the other ones. Come up with a structure that is adaptable, okay? And I'll give you an example for King Henry in just a second, okay? For Henry IV, part 1, all right? But that's the key. You choose one question, draft an essay, keeping the other questions in mind so you know, oh yes, this progression of ideas would still work. So you choose ideas that are universally applicable across all of the questions, even if they have a different emphasis, which of course they will. That's when you'll practice the rewording, you'll practice reframing those ideas, but you won't actually change the fundamental structure. So build that structure carefully to begin with, perfect the core essay that you're completing, and then practice adapting it to all of the other ones after. Excuse me. Make sure that you don't memorize that core essay until you've timed it out and you know that you have plenty of time to spare. So if you have a 40-minute exam coming up, make sure you can write out your memorized draft essay in 32 minutes, 32 to 34. But 32 is always good. It gives you 8 minutes. That's 20% of the allocated time to adapt on the day, okay? The last thing you want is to be stressing about how much time you have left to write your essay. So do all of that hard work up front in preparation. Know exactly how long your draft essay takes. Memorize it really well and have done lots of practice for all of the different possible questions. And, that's all there is to it, right? Sounds so simple. Yes, it's time consuming. There are a lot of elements that I just went through there. But if you actually follow those steps, that's the proven formula for success in English. So it's really just saying, well, if you want to get top marks, there's the recipe. Are you willing to put in the work? So that's what you have to decide. How much do you want it? I'll spare the motivational chat on this occasion, though. Let's talk about the Henry IV Part 1 structure that you could use. You mentioned that there are just so many ideas, right? So much to discuss in terms of leadership, honor. Here's my suggestion on that. Choose one core idea that you can build up over the course of 3 body paragraphs. So for a Module B essay, if you're doing an essay on one text, okay, if you're doing an essay on one text only, you aim for 3 body paragraphs. Introduction, 3 bodies, conclusion. And in terms of the body paragraphs, here's the secret structure that I recommend, okay? Here's the secret structure that I recommend for Mod B, including for Henry. I would be looking at leadership, the notion of leadership, and the different perspectives that are offered on leadership throughout the play. Because I know that leadership and honor are interrelated. And if I get a question on honor, but I prepared on leadership, that's easily adaptable. If I get a question on identity, that's to do with identities as a leader or your identity as someone that's honorable or dishonorable. They're all going to relate, okay? But leadership is key. What Shakespeare is exploring in this play is the question of what makes a great leader or what makes an effective leader. And there are different approaches offered through the different characters in the play. But the way I would do it is work through chronologically, so in order of the play, work through the 3 key perspectives that come out. And to me, for anyone doing Henry IV Part 1, 3 really useful perspectives in order would be, if we're looking at King Henry feels insecure about his position as king. There are rebellions on the rise. He's afraid of an uprising. He's disappointed in his son, Harry. He's disappointed in Prince Henry because he doesn't believe that his son is cut out to be a leader, right? He thinks that he's a bit of a fool. He's wasting his talent. He's mucking around at the tavern. He's hanging out with, the lower end of society, right? This is what King Henry is saying. So King Henry has his own particular point of view. But what we know about King Henry is that he's insecure about his power. And so he tries to use language to actually instill fear in the public. So his approach, because it comes out of fear, is actually to make others feel fear so that they think that he is a necessary leader. So his approach is quite scarce. He has a scarce approach to leadership. You can examine the character of King Henry more so in the first body and think about how everything he does, the way he talks, the language that he's constructing, because a lot of this is about how people are putting on these personas and different identities. But what he's really doing there is he's trying to justify his position as king because he feels insecure and he feels like he doesn't have an heir to the throne that he can rely on in his son. He actually constantly is comparing his son to Hotspur. And he says, why can't you be more like him? Okay. So you've got an insecure leader who doesn't believe in the capabilities of his son and he's afraid of losing his power. So we see how the way he talks, how the language he's using, how all of that is kind of manipulated to try and manufacture his own legitimacy in the eyes of the public. Okay, there's paragraph 1. You can explore that. Paragraph 2, I find that looking at the juxtaposition, the contrast between the characters of Hotspur and Falstaff is a really interesting one. So in the second body paragraph for Henry IV Part 1, you can actually explore how Falstaff embodies the antithesis, the opposite of Hotspur, right? Hotspur is the honorable one. He's excessively honorable. He's obsessed with honor, and he actually is quite impulsive. He does everything in the name of honor. But that has its flaws. He's still a flawed character, right? He's seen to be a bad husband, for instance, and he's a bit over the top. He doesn't understand the people, right? Hal understands the people. We'll come back to him. So you have Hotspur, who's obsessed with honor, and we see how that's probably not the correct recipe. Then you have Falstaff, who is basically there for comedic relief and to provide that opposition as a foil. He's a foil, a character contrast. He's an opposite to Hotspur, and he is quite dishonorable. He doesn't believe in honor. He mocks honor, right? And yes, he's kind of injecting that comedic element into the play, but that's really important as well, right? Because comedy is used to expose truth. So when he's making jokes and mocking the excessive honor that's displayed by other characters, there's actually a truth in that's quite enjoyable to watch as an audience, but it's also resonating as well. Like, oh, maybe that's not the right approach either. So you get that contrast. Third body paragraph, final paragraph, I like to go towards Hal as a transformed character, and he deliberately transforms. He actually intended to kind of win over the public by being one with the people, and he hangs out with the taverners, and his dad's disappointed in him. He says, why are you wasting all your talent? And he says, oh, look, it's all part of the plan. Or at least he says to us, it's all part of the plan. And then he assures his dad later on, I think it's around Act 3, he says, okay, I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to rise up to the occasion now, okay? But he has the backing of the people like Hal. And that actually demonstrates a really interesting point, which is the idea that sometimes to be a great leader, you need to create a story. And his story is that he was this kind of no-hoper, right? He hung out with the lower end of society, but then he's able to rise up and he's able to redeem himself. So he kind of embodies the hero's journey. And people relate to that. He's like the underdog. If it was in Australia, we'd say, oh, we love going for the underdog. Hal's the underdog. And he leverages that to garner support of the public. And he rises to the occasion, and he uses that narrative, that story about being the underdog to his favor. And so he ends up being, the appropriate leader where he has a certain level of honor, but he also knows to humble himself to the people. So he's not excessively honorable. He's somewhere in the middle. He can still kind of joke around, not take things too seriously as well. So he kind of slots in the middle between Hotspur and Falstaff and actually surprises his dad in the end. So you've got different models of leadership. They all relate to honor, dishonor, identity, because people are putting on these different facades. But I would just follow that chain of leadership and the different examples. Shakespeare's basically investigating what makes a great leader. Here are different models. Here's the interesting concept about, creating your own narrative of leadership and a story that relates with the people, especially in times of uncertainty. Give them some inspiration. Give them an example of a thriving hero so that they can get behind you because they also want to feel like that themselves. All right, hopefully that helps you. There's some good insights there for Henry IV, Part 1. And let's have a look at any other questions. I'll just take a couple more. Comment, bit of feedback here. I'd love to be as extensive and in-depth as you have for the thesis statement. Yeah, my teachers always seek for conciseness or concision. I guess now my question is, how can I actually achieve the same level of specificity and detail whilst being succinct and concise? Yeah, that's a great tension that you pointed out. A tension between being specific and detailed and yet being concise. And look, I think it is a tricky balance to achieve, but there's just a couple of things to avoid doing and a couple of things to try and do that will help you kind of get there. So what should you avoid doing? What's going to not lead to concision? The things that are going to get in the way of concision are listing. So when you say what something's about, just listing a whole bunch of things, it's about power, corruption, manipulation. Forget about all of that. You're focusing on one thing. So you've eliminated all of the repetitive words and the listing, and you're replacing that with a more specific breakdown of the one thing. So every time you talk about a concept, focus on one thing only. There's your concision, but expand on it and say something specific about it. As soon as you say something specific about it, move on to the next point. So I think that's how you'll achieve that concision. Remove any of that, the listing, and don't stop trying to Stop trying to jam more information in to compensate for a lack of specificity in the response. That's what a lot of students do. They'll think, oh, I haven't done enough in this sentence, so I'm just going to tack on some more. And they keep adding commas and they add more clauses, right? Challenge yourself to only use 1 or 2 commas per sentence, maximum 2 commas. And you'll often find that all of those additional clauses and phrases you were adding were just repeating the other ones, right? You were saying the same thing, but you were trying to make yourself feel like you'd done more. So quantity isn't always more. That's the concision point. But you need to actually see the truth. And what I mean by that is by removing all of the repetitive parts, maybe you're left with something that's really vague in general. Hence, you added all of the repetitive elements. But you need to look at that one element and think, oh, I haven't actually said that much. Even though I've written like 4 lines, it's all saying the same thing. It's just listing. Actually, if I remove all of that, I'm really only saying this one thing, and this one thing isn't that specific. Great. Your job now is to just make it specific by asking yourself, why is that important? What type? How is that represented? How does that connect to context? There are certain little questions you can ask yourself about certain ideas. And once you actually unpack it, that's all you need to write, and you can move on to the next point. So yeah, there are a few kind of thoughts on that, but that is a great tension. I need to see some examples as well. Feel free to send through some examples. For anyone else who's on here, if you want your work reviewed, jump onto Jedd-AI. You can actually start at the moment for free. So there's a free trial period. Jedd-AI, it's on the Jeddle website. So make sure you jump on there. And if you go to jeddle.com and then click on marking and feedback, or just click Jedd-AI, here it is. Here's the URL. If you jump on there, you can actually go and try out Jedd-AI for free, and you can get expert feedback from us. We'll help you become more concise. You just submit your responses as you go through your different courses, as you prepare for trials, if you're doing the HSC, and you can also use Jedd-AI for that immediate feedback as well. In terms of word count, do you think that 1,050 to 1,150 words is enough for full marks in Mod A? Now, I really don't like this question, because I appreciate the question, by the way, William. What I mean by I don't like the question is you're giving me a word count, but to me, it's about how much you can actually write in the allocated time. That's more important. There's no point in me saying, oh, everyone has to have a 2,000 word essay if you're only going to be able to write 700 words on the day. A lot of students can only do 600 words in an essay. You need to understand what you can actually do in the allocated time while still allowing time to adapt to the question. So 32 to 34 minutes is always the goal for an essay. So William, the answer is not you need to write this many words. It's how many words can you write in 32 to 34 minutes? And then you'll be able to give me the answer yourself. You'll say, oh, I can only do 800 words in that. And okay, great. You can get full marks with 800. Is there a cap? Is there a limit? Is there a minimum for getting full marks in something like Mod A? Yes, obviously you can't write 100 words and get full marks, but you'd be surprised by what the amount of words you could write is to get full marks. It's not as many as you'd think. And I'll give you an example, William. So my Module A essay, going a little bit back now, my Module A essay got full marks, and my Mod A was 900 words, 900, okay? A lot of my essays were 850 words. They were all between around 850 to 900, because I knew that was the time, that was the amount of words that I could actually write in about 34, 33 minutes to then allow me to adapt to the question on the day throughout. So 900 words I know is possible to get full marks in. And I've even seen shorter essays get full marks, 800, 850. So it's all about how much you can write. Obviously, try and write as much as you can within the 32, 33, 34 minutes. Stretch it to 34 with Module A if you're doing textual conversations, because there is a lot of content you want to cover. But you need to put in a lot of work up front to make that essay as concise as possible. Every sentence needs to be meaningful. Every phrase needs to be meaningful. If it's not, get rid of it. Get rid of it. Be honest with yourself, and you might find that before your exams, maybe your last body paragraph, if you've got 4 bodies, maybe the last one only has 2 sentences in the middle, but in between the topic sentence and the link. Maybe you don't even have a link sentence for the very last body. You need to actually be honest about how much you can write and prepare all of that in advance so there's no surprises on the day. But trust me, you don't need to have more than 1,000 words or even more than 900 words or even more than 850 words to get full marks. But be honest with yourself, test yourself. How many words can you write in 34 minutes maximum? And let that be your guide. All right, Ryan, appreciate it. Hopefully that helped you with Henry and William. All good, no worries. Guys, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed the feedback. Always a pleasure. If you want me to review your responses, again, the best way to do it to get me to actually look at it is to go on to Jedd-AI. So you can go to the Jeddle website and use Jedd-AI. You can start it for free, or you can click the link that's going to be underneath this video and submit it as well. And you can kind of go in that lottery to get feedback on this. Hopefully I see you guys next week. I'll aim for Wednesday or Thursday, possibly Thursday. Until then, good luck with all your exams and feel free to email if you have any questions, hello@jeddle.com. See you guys soon.